The Valorian Empire had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. Their ships numbered in the tens of thousands. Their conquered worlds stretched across entire galaxies. They had crushed rebellions, destroyed civilizations, and wiped out species that dared to resist them. In all that time, they had never known true fear. High Admiral Vorath sat in his command chair aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion. The bridge around him hummed with activity. Officers moved between stations, checking reports and monitoring the vast network of sensors that watched the Empire's borders. It was a quiet day, like most days. Nothing ever challenged the Empire anymore. A junior officer approached his chair and bowed low. "Hi, Admiral. Our border sensors have detected a vessel entering Imperial space." Vorath did not look up from the tactical display he was studying. "Classification?" "Unknown, sir. Single ship. No identification beacon. It is not responding to hails." "A smuggler, then? Or perhaps a lost merchant who wandered too far from safe lanes?" Vorath waved his hand dismissively. "Send a patrol squadron to intercept. Destroy it if it resists. Capture it if it does not." "I want to know who is foolish enough to enter our space without permission." "Yes, High Admiral." The officer hurried away to carry out the order. Vorath returned to his tactical display, already forgetting about the unknown ship. Such things happen from time to time. Lost vessels, broken navigation systems, desperate criminals trying to escape justice. They were all dealt with the same way. The Empire did not tolerate intrusion. 12 warships of the 3rd Patrol Squadron broke formation from their positions along the border. Their commanders were experienced veterans who had served the Empire for decades. They had destroyed pirates, crushed rebellions, and enforced Imperial law across 100 systems. A single unknown vessel was nothing to them. Squadron Commander Threll stood on the bridge of his ship, the Iron Claw, and watched the sensor display. The unknown vessel was moving slowly through Imperial space, making no attempt to hide or flee. It was either very brave or very stupid. "Open a channel," Threll ordered. "Give them one chance to surrender." The communications officer worked at his station for a moment. "Channel open, Commander." "Unknown vessel. Wait, this is Squadron Commander Threll of the Valorian Imperial Navy. You have entered Imperial space without authorization. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. If you resist, you will be destroyed. You have 1 minute to comply." They waited. The minute passed. The unknown vessel did not respond. It did not slow down. It simply continued on its course, moving deeper into Imperial space. Threll's eyes narrowed. "Scan that ship. I want to know everything about it." The sensor officer bent over his console, running every scan available to him. When he looked up, his face was confused. "Commander, I am having difficulty getting clear readings. The hull material is unusual. I cannot identify it. The ship appears to be heavily armed, but the weapons signatures do not match anything in our database." "What about size?" "A configuration? Medium cruiser class, approximately. But the design is unlike anything I have seen. It almost looks like..." The officer paused, checking his readings again. "Sir, this is impossible. The design patterns show similarities to Terran military vessels." A cold silence fell over the bridge. Every officer turned to look at the sensor display. "Terran?" Threll repeated. "That is impossible. The Terrans were exterminated 200 years ago. Every colony burned, every ship destroyed. Check your readings again." "I have checked them 3 times, Commander. The design elements are unmistakable. This ship follows Terran construction principles." Threll stared at the sensor display for a long moment. The unknown vessel continued its slow, steady advance. It showed no fear. It showed no hesitation. It moved like a predator that knew it had nothing to fear from the prey around it. "It must be a trick," Threll said finally. "Some other species using captured Terran technology or copying their designs. It does not matter. All ships move to intercept. Weapons free. Destroy that vessel." The 12 warships of the 3rd Patrol Squadron accelerated toward the unknown vessel. Their weapons charged and locked onto the target. They had overwhelming firepower. They had superior numbers. They had 3,000 years of military experience. None of it mattered. The unknown vessel moved. One moment it was drifting slowly through space. The next it was among them, moving faster than their sensors could track. Light flashed across the darkness of space. Energy beams of a color the Valorians had never seen cut through their ships like blades through paper. The Iron Claw shuddered as something hit the shields. The lights flickered. Alarms screamed. Threll grabbed his command chair as the ship rocked from another impact. "Report!" he shouted. "Shields down to 40%. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. We have lost contact with the Stormbringer and the Conquest." On the sensor display, 2 of the squadron ships were simply gone. Not damaged, not retreating, gone. Where they had been, there was only expanding debris. "Return fire! All ships, concentrate fire on that target." The remaining ships of the squadron opened fire with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Energy weapons blazed. Kinetic rounds hammered toward the enemy vessel. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The unknown ship did not even slow down. Its hull seemed to shift and flow, absorbing some weapons, deflecting others. It moved through the barrage like it was walking through rain. 3 more Valorian ships died in the next 10 seconds. "This is impossible," the weapons officer whispered. "Nothing can survive that kind of firepower. Nothing." Threll watched the sensor display with growing horror. The unknown vessel was not just fighting them. It was playing with them. It could have destroyed them all in the first few seconds. Instead, it was taking them apart piece by piece, almost methodically. "Send a message to command," Threll ordered. "Emergency priority. Tell them." He never finished the sentence. The Iron Claw shook one final time as something tore through its reactor core. And the explosion was brief and brilliant. The 3rd Patrol Squadron ceased to exist. Far away on the Eternal Dominion, High Admiral Vorath received the news. His face went pale. 12 warships destroyed in less than 2 minutes. No survivors, no distress calls, just silence. "It must have been a fleet," he said. "A hidden fleet waiting to ambush our patrol. That is the only explanation. Our long-range sensors show only 1 vessel in that area, High Admiral," the sensor officer reported. "A single ship. It is continuing on its original course." "1 ship destroyed 12 of our warships?" Vorath stood from his command chair. "That is not possible. Send the 15th Battle Group. 50 ships. I want that vessel found and destroyed. I want wreckage that I can examine. I want to know who did this." The 15th Battle Group was one of the most experienced combat units in the Imperial Navy. 50 warships, including heavy cruisers and 2 battleships, all commanded by officers who had won a dozen campaigns. They moved to intercept the unknown vessel with grim determination. 3 hours later, their final transmission reached the Eternal Dominion. It was not a proper report. It was not a request for reinforcements. It was a single word, screamed across all channels by someone who had forgotten everything except pure terror. "Impossible!" Then silence. High Admiral Vorath stood frozen on his bridge. Around him, his officers were pale with fear. 62 warships destroyed. Not a single enemy vessel damaged. Not a single survivor. In all his years of service, Vorath had never seen anything like this. "When I get me Imperial intelligence," he ordered. "Now! I want to know what we are dealing with." The response from Imperial intelligence arrived within the hour. A holographic image appeared on the bridge, showing the unknown vessel in detail. It was sleek and angular, built with a brutal efficiency that spoke of pure military purpose. The design was unmistakable now that Vorath looked at it closely. A Terran warship, but that was impossible. The intelligence officer spoke in a calm, measured voice. "High Admiral, we have identified the vessel. It matches historical records of the Terran Confederacy military. The design is based on their heavy cruiser class, though it has been significantly modified." "The Terran Confederacy no longer exists," Vorath said. "We destroyed them 200 years ago. Every colony, every station, every ship. Our records are clear." "Our records may have been incomplete, High Admiral. Analysis of the vessel's course suggests it originated from outside known space, deep space, the void between galaxies. You are suggesting that Terran survivors have been hiding in the void for 200 years? I am suggesting that is the most likely explanation for what we are seeing. Yes." Vorath stared at the image of the human ship. It continued its slow, steady advance deeper into Imperial space. It showed no fear. It sent no messages. It simply moved forward, destroying everything in its path. "What are its capabilities?" he asked. "Unknown, High Admiral. Its weapons do not match any technology in our database. Its defensive systems appear to be adaptive, learning from each attack used against it. Like its engines operate on principles we do not understand." The intelligence officer paused. "We have no reliable way to assess its full combat potential. 62 of our ships have been destroyed. That tells us its combat potential." "Yes, High Admiral, it does." Vorath turned away from the holographic display. His mind was racing, trying to understand what this meant. The humans had been thorough enemies during the war. For 50 years, they had fought the Empire with everything they had. They had refused to surrender. They had refused to submit. They had fought until there was nothing left to fight with. The Empire had been forced to exterminate them. There had been no other choice. A species that fought like that could never be truly conquered. They could only be destroyed, or so everyone had believed. "Send word to the Emperor," Vorath ordered. Tell him that the humans have returned." On the Valorian throne world, Emperor Calith IX received the message. He read it 3 times before he fully understood what it said. Then he sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the stars outside his window. The humans had returned. He remembered the stories his father had told him about the Terran War. The humans had been primitive compared to the Empire. Their technology had been centuries behind. Their numbers had been small. They should have been conquered in a matter of weeks. Instead, the war had lasted 50 years. 50 years of bloody fighting across 100 star systems. 50 years of watching the humans adapt, learn, and grow stronger with every battle. 50 years of realizing that these strange, short-lived creatures simply would not give up. In the end, the Empire had won, but it had cost them more than any other war in their history. The decision to exterminate the humans had been necessary. A species that fought like that could never be allowed to survive. But now, 200 years later, a human ship had appeared from the void. A single ship that had destroyed 62 Imperial warships without taking damage. What had the humans been doing in those 200 years? The Emperor did not know, but for the first time in his long reign, he felt something cold growing in his chest. Something he had not felt since he was a child, hearing stories of monsters in the dark. Fear. Across the Empire, word began to spread. The border patrols had been destroyed. Something was coming from deep space, something that could not be stopped. And in the conquered worlds, where billions of enslaved aliens labored under Valorian rule, a new whisper began to circulate, a whisper that carried with it the faint light of hope. The humans had returned. The humans remembered. The ship continued its advance, silent and unstoppable. It did not hurry. It did not slow. It simply moved forward, deeper into Imperial space, leaving only death and silence in its wake. On the bridge of that ship, a lone figure stood watching the stars. Captain Alara Chen, commander of the TCS Revenant, last surviving warship of the Terran Confederacy. Behind her, 847 crew members worked at their stations, running checks, monitoring systems, preparing for what was to come. They were the last, the final survivors of a species the Empire had tried to erase from existence. And for 200 years, they had drifted through the void between galaxies, running, hiding, building, planning. Now they had returned. Chen looked at the tactical display showing the path ahead. The Imperial core worlds lay before them. The heart of the Empire that had murdered her people. The center of the civilization that had burned Earth. "Navigation," she said quietly. "Maintain course. Best speed." "Aye, Captain. Maintaining course." The Revenant moved forward into the darkness. Behind it, the Empire began to tremble. Ahead of it lay reckoning, 200 years in the making. The humans had returned, and they had not come to negotiate. The bridge of the TCS Revenant was quiet except for the soft hum of systems working perfectly. Captain Alara Chen stood at the central command platform, her hands clasped behind her back, watching the main display. Stars drifted slowly past as the ship continued its advance into Imperial space. She was 73 years old. Though she looked no older than 40, the medical technology they had developed during their exile had slowed aging considerably. It was one of many gifts born from desperation and determination. Around her, The bridge crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Their parents had trained for it. Their grandparents had trained for it. 8 generations of humans, born and raised aboard this single ship, all preparing for the day they would return. That day had finally arrived. Commander David Park, her first officer, approached with a data pad in his hand. "Captain, we have completed analysis of the last engagement. 62 enemy vessels destroyed, 0 damage sustained. Our adaptive hull systems performed exactly as designed." Chen nodded slowly. "Casualties on our side?" "None, Captain." "And on theirs?" "Estimated enemy casualties, 47,000. Chen was silent for a moment. 47,000 lives ended in a matter of hours? 47,000 Valorians who would never return to their homes, never see their families again. It was a terrible number, but it was nothing compared to what the Valorians had done. "Continue on course," she said. "Maintain current speed." "Aye, Captain." Chen turned and walked toward the rear of the bridge, where a large window offered a view of the stars. She stood there for a long moment, remembering. 203 years ago, the Valorian Empire had come to Earth. They had arrived with a fleet of thousands, expecting an easy conquest. Humanity had been a young species then, only recently developing faster than light travel. They had a handful of colonies, a small military fleet, and no knowledge of the vast empire that ruled this region of space. The Valorians had demanded surrender. Humanity had refused. What followed was 50 years of war, the bloodiest, most desperate conflict in human history. Earth had united like never before, pouring every resource into the fight for survival. They had built ships, trained soldiers, developed new weapons. They had fought with everything they had, and it had not been enough. The empire was too vast, too powerful, too experienced. For every Valorian ship the humans destroyed, 10 more took its place. For every system they defended, 3 others fell. Slowly, inevitably, humanity was pushed back toward Earth itself. Chen's grandfather had been a young officer on the day Earth burned. He had been aboard one of the last ships to escape the planet's orbit, watching through tears as Valorian weapons turned the cradle of humanity into a ball of molten rock. 7 billion people died in a single day. The survivors had scattered, fleeing in every direction. The Valorians had hunted them without mercy. Colony by colony, station by station, ship by ship, humanity was erased from the galaxy. The Empire made it official policy. No human was to be left alive. They were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too resilient. They had to be completely destroyed. Almost all of them were. The Revenant had been a heavy cruiser named the TCS Defiance back then. It had escaped the final battle with a crew of 2,000 survivors, including Chen's grandfather. They had fled into the void between galaxies, running silent, hiding in the darkness where no one would think to look. For 200 years, they had drifted through that endless night. Generations were born and died aboard the ship. They recycled everything. They grew food in hydroponic bays. They taught their children the history of Earth, the stories of the war, the names of everyone who had been lost. And they planned. Chen turned from the window and walked back to her command chair. She activated a control, and a holographic display appeared before her. It showed the current state of the ship, inside and out. The Revenant no longer resembled the vessel that had fled Earth. Every system had been rebuilt, improved, perfected. The hull had been replaced with adaptive nanomaterials that could reshape themselves in response to attack. The engines had been redesigned based on theories that Valorian physicists would have called impossible. The weapons were unlike anything that existed in known space. They had not developed all of this alone. During their exile, the Revenant had discovered the remains of other civilizations, species that the Valorian Empire had destroyed before humanity even existed. Dead worlds, shattered stations, drifting wreckage filled with technology that the Valorians had never bothered to study or preserve. The humans had studied it. They had learned from it. They had combined it with their own knowledge and created something new. Chief Engineer Martinez appeared at Chen's side. She was a tall woman with gray streaks in her dark hair. "I am one of the few people aboard who was older than the captain." "Power systems are operating at full capacity," Martinez reported. "The new reactor is performing better than expected. We can maintain combat operations indefinitely. Good, what about the hull? The adaptive systems have already incorporated data from the last engagement. The nanomaterials are restructuring to be more resistant to Valorian weapons. By the time we reach their core worlds, we will be nearly invulnerable to anything they can throw at us. Chen nodded. The adaptive hull was perhaps their greatest advantage. Every time an enemy weapon hit them, the hull analyzed it, learned from it, and adjusted. The first few shots from a new weapon might cause minor damage. After that, similar weapons became almost useless. The Valorians had not changed their military technology significantly in centuries. They had not needed to. They were so powerful that no one could challenge them. Their weapons were the same weapons they had used to destroy Earth. The Revenant had already encountered all of them during the last engagements, already adapted to all of them, already rendered them ineffective. Captain, the voice came from the communications station. Lieutenant Kim, a young woman barely out of her 20s, looked up from her console. We are detecting increased communication traffic from the Imperial sectors ahead. They know we are coming. Of course they do. We wanted them to know. They are assembling a larger fleet. Early estimates suggest over 500 vessels. Chen smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. Good. Let them gather. Which the more they concentrate, the more we can destroy at once. She stood and walked to the center of the bridge. Her crew looked up at her, waiting. These were the descendants of survivors, the children of refugees, the last generation of a species that had been hunted to near extinction. They had all grown up knowing this day would come. Open a ship-wide channel, Chen ordered. Channel open, Captain. Chen took a breath. When she spoke, her voice carried to every section of the ship, every corridor, every room where her crew waited and worked. This is the captain. 200 years ago, our ancestors fled the destruction of Earth. They escaped into the void with nothing but their lives and their determination to survive. They could have given up. They could have hidden forever in the darkness between galaxies, letting the Valorian Empire believe they had succeeded in erasing humanity from existence. They chose a different path. They chose to survive. They chose to rebuild. They chose to prepare for this moment, when we would return to face the empire that tried to destroy us. Every one of you has grown up knowing the stories. You know the names of the cities that burned on Earth. You know the names of the colonies that were destroyed. You know the names of the ships that fell defending our people. That knowledge is our inheritance. It is our burden. And now it is our weapon. We are not here for revenge. Revenge is small and petty and beneath what we have become. We are here for justice. We are here to show the galaxy that humanity cannot be erased. We are here to remind the Valorians that their power is not absolute. Their empire is not eternal, and their crimes are not forgotten. They took everything from us, our world, our families, our future. They thought they had won. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. Today, we begin the work our ancestors started. Today, we make the Valorian Empire remember what it means to face humanity. Today, we show them that some debts cannot be escaped. All hands, battle stations, prepare for combat operations. She closed the channel. Around her, the bridge crew returned to their work with renewed focus. On displays throughout the ship, she could see her crew moving to their positions, checking systems, readying themselves for what was to come. Commander Park spoke quietly. Captain, I have been reviewing the intelligence we gathered on Valorian defenses. Their fleet concentrations, their defensive systems, their response protocols. They have not significantly changed anything in over a century. They have not needed to, Chen said. No one has challenged them in that time. They have grown complacent. It will be their downfall. Yes, it will. Chen sat back in her command chair and studied the tactical display. The path ahead was marked clearly, a direct route to the Imperial core worlds, passing through some of the most heavily defended space in the Empire. Any other attacker would have been forced to take a slower, more cautious route, picking off outer systems first, building up forces, working their way inward over years or decades. The Revenant would take the direct path. They did not have time for caution. They did not need it. One ship against an empire was madness by any normal calculation. But the Revenant was not a normal ship. Navigation. What is our time to the next Imperial defensive line? 12 hours at current speed, Captain. And the fleet they are assembling? Intelligence suggests they will have approximately 500 vessels in position by the time we arrive. Possibly more. Chen nodded. 500 ships. A significant force by any standard. Enough to destroy a fleet many times the Revenant's size. Maintain course. Do not alter speed. Aye, Captain. The hours passed slowly. Chen remained on the bridge, watching, waiting, thinking. She thought about her grandfather, who had lived long enough to see her born, long enough to tell her the stories of Earth himself. She remembered sitting on his knee as a child, listening to him describe blue skies and green fields, oceans and mountains, cities full of people living their lives without fear. She had never seen any of those things. She had been born aboard the Revenant, like her mother and grandmother before her. Earth was a story to her, a legend, a dream of a world that no longer existed. But she remembered her grandfather's eyes when he spoke of it. The love, the loss, the cold, burning anger that never quite went away. She carried that anger now. She had shaped it, controlled it, turned it into something useful. It was not rage. It was not hatred. It was something colder and harder and more patient. It was purpose. Her grandfather had told her, near the end of his life, why the humans had not simply fled forever into the void. We could have run, he had said. We could have found some distant corner of the universe and rebuilt, started over. He'd forgotten everything that happened. Some people wanted that. They said it was the only way to truly survive. Why did we not do that? The young Alara had asked. Her grandfather had smiled sadly. Because that would not have been survival. That would have been erasure of a different kind. The Valorians wanted to remove humanity from the universe. If we simply ran away and forgot who we were, forgot what was done to us, we would be helping them succeed. Humanity is not just bodies and genes and biological processes. Humanity is memory. It is history. It is the knowledge of who we were and what we stood for. If we abandon that, we abandon ourselves. So we remember, Ilara had said. We remember. And one day, we return. Not for revenge, not for destruction, but to prove that we still exist, that we survived, that nothing they did to us was enough to truly destroy us. Chen opened her eyes. The tactical display showed the approaching Imperial defensive line. 500 ships were arranged in a wall of steel and fire, waiting for the Revenant to arrive. She activated the ship-wide channel again. All hands, this is the captain. We are approaching the enemy fleet. You know what to do. Show them what 200 years of preparation looks like. The Revenant accelerated, rushing toward the waiting fleet like a predator, leaping toward prey that did not understand how badly it was outmatched. In her mind, Chen heard her grandfather's voice one final time. We remember, she whispered, and now so will they. Emperor Calith IX sat upon his throne in the grand palace of Valoria Prime. The throne room was vast. He built to make all who entered feel small and insignificant. Columns of polished black stone rose toward a ceiling painted with scenes of imperial glory. The conquests of 1,000 worlds decorated these walls, reminders of the Empire's eternal power. Today, that power felt less certain. The Emperor was old by Valorian standards, over 400 years into his reign. He had seen wars, rebellions, and crises of every kind. He had always emerged victorious. The Empire had always emerged stronger, but he had never faced anything like this. Before him stood the War Council, the greatest military minds of the Valorian Empire. High Admiral Vorath was there, his face pale and drawn. Around him were generals, fleet commanders, intelligence officers, and strategic advisors. They had been summoned to address a threat that none of them fully understood. Report, the Emperor commanded. His voice echoed through the throne room. High Admiral Vorath stepped forward and bowed. Your Majesty, the situation is grave. In the past 72 hours, we have lost over 500 warships to the enemy vessel. The 5th Fleet was destroyed attempting to stop it at the Karthak defense line. The 9th Fleet was annihilated at the Valora crossing. Our forces have been unable to damage the enemy ship in any meaningful way. Murmurs ran through the assembled officers. 500 ships, entire fleets. Gone. One ship, the Emperor said slowly. One single ship has done this. Yes, Your Majesty. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. Explain to me how this is possible. Our fleets are the most powerful in the galaxy. Our weapons are unmatched. Our warriors are trained from birth to fight and kill. How can one ship destroy 500 of ours without suffering damage? No one spoke. No one had an answer. Finally, the intelligence minister, a thin Valorian named Kareth, stepped forward. Your Majesty, we have analyzed the data from the engagements. The enemy vessel possesses technology that is far beyond anything in our databases. Its hull appears to be made of adaptive nanomaterials that change in response to our weapons. After being struck a few times by any particular weapon type, the hull becomes resistant to that weapon. Our energy beams, kinetic projectiles, and missiles all become less effective the more we use them. Then use different weapons, General Morris suggested. We have many types. We have used all of them, General. The enemy ship has now adapted to every weapon in our arsenal. Our attacks caused no damage at all. Silence fell over the throne room. The implications were clear. They had nothing that could hurt this ship. What about its weapons? The Emperor asked. The enemy weapons operate on principles we do not understand? Kareth continued. They cut through our shields as if they do not exist. Our armor provides no protection. A single hit from the enemy's main weapon can destroy a battleship. We have no defense against them. The Emperor's hands tightened on the arms of his throne. How is this possible? The humans were primitives. They had no technology to speak of when we destroyed them. Where did this ship come from? Our best estimate is that survivors fled into deep space after the war, the void between galaxies. Yes, they have had 200 years to develop this technology. 200 years! We have had 3,000 years to develop ours. Yes, Your Majesty, but we have had no challenges, no enemies to force us to improve. The humans have had nothing but challenges. They have had survival itself as motivation. It appears they use that motivation well. General Tarvok, commander of the Imperial Guard, pushed his way forward. He was a massive Valorian, scarred from 100 battles. This talk of adaptive materials and unknown weapons is meaningless. No single ship, no matter how advanced, can defeat the entire Imperial Armada. We have 8,000 warships at our disposal. 8,000. This human vessel may have destroyed 500, but that still leaves 7,500 ready for battle. What do you propose? General, the Emperor asked. We concentrate our forces, all of them, at the KTH Nexus, the only passage to the core worlds. We create a wall of ships that nothing can pass through. When the human vessel arrives, we hit it with everything we have at once. Even adaptive technology cannot handle 8,000 ships firing simultaneously. Admiral Vorath shook his head. The enemy ship moves faster than anything we have. It could simply go around any defensive line we create. Not at KTH Nexus, General Tarvok insisted. The nebula surrounding the Nexus is impassable. Radiation, gravitational anomalies, dense matter fields. No ship can survive passage through it. Any vessel wanting to reach the core worlds must come through the Nexus passage. There is no other way. The Emperor considered this. The KTH Nexus was indeed a natural choke point. It was why the core worlds had never been invaded in 3,000 years of history. Any attacker would have to come through that single passage, facing whatever defenses the Empire placed there. How long until the enemy vessel reaches the Nexus? He asked. At its current speed, approximately 4 days, Your Majesty. And how long to concentrate our forces there? 3 days, if we begin immediately. The Emperor nodded slowly. Do it. Gather every ship we have. Strip the border defenses. Recall the patrol fleets. Empty the orbital stations. I want 8,000 warships at KTH Nexus when that human ship arrives. Your Majesty, the intelligence minister interrupted, if we strip our border defenses, we leave ourselves vulnerable to attack from other powers. The Kethrani Collective has been watching our situation closely. They may see an opportunity. Let them watch. Let them all watch. We will destroy this human vessel and remind the galaxy why the Valorian Empire rules. No one will dare to attack us after they see what we do to our enemies. The orders were given. Across the Empire, ships began to move. Thousands of warships broke orbit from their stations and set course for KTH Nexus. It was the largest fleet gathering in Imperial history. But as the military mobilized, something else was happening in the Empire. Something the generals and admirals did not fully understand. Word was spreading. in the slave quarters of 100 worlds, where conquered species labored under Valorian rule. Whispers passed from mouth to mouth. The humans had returned. A single human ship had destroyed 500 Valorian warships. The invincible empire was afraid. On Tarka 7, a mining world where the native Tarkani had been enslaved for 8 centuries, an old worker spoke quietly to those around him. "My grandfather's grandfather told stories of the humans," he said. "They were not strong like the Valorians. They did not live long. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. But they had something else. They had fire in their hearts that would not go out." "They were destroyed," a younger worker said. "Everyone knows that." "So we were told. But now a human ship appears from nowhere and destroys Valorian fleets without being touched. Perhaps they were not destroyed. Perhaps they were only hiding. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" The old Tarkani smiled, showing worn teeth. "Gosh, waiting for the right moment to return." Similar conversations were happening across the Empire. The Krell of Krellis III, the Vorathi of the Vorathi cluster, the Sethani of Sethan Prime. All the species the Empire had conquered, all the peoples who had lived under Valorian rule for centuries or millennia, were hearing the news and beginning to hope. The Empire's control had always been based on fear. Fear of the Valorian fleets, fear of the Valorian weapons, fear of the consequences of resistance. But now, for the first time, that fear was being challenged by a different fear entirely. The Valorians were afraid of something. A single human ship had made the masters of the galaxy tremble. If the humans could make the Valorians afraid, perhaps they could be defeated. Perhaps the eternal empire was not so eternal after all. Yes, in the Imperial Palace, Emperor Calith was aware of the unrest. His intelligence services reported the whispers, the growing hope among the slave populations. He knew what it meant. The Empire's power depended on the belief that resistance was impossible. If that belief cracked, everything could begin to crumble. He summoned his eldest advisor, a Valorian named Althros, who had served 3 emperors before him. Althros was ancient, over 1,000 years old, kept alive by the most advanced medical technology the Empire possessed. He had been there during the Terran War. He remembered the humans firsthand. "Tell me about them," the Emperor commanded. "The humans. Tell me what we faced." Althros sat slowly, his old bones creaking. His eyes were distant, looking at memories centuries old. "They were not impressive at first," he said. "Small creatures, physically weak, with short lifespans. When we arrived at their world, we expected them to surrender immediately. They were so clearly outmatched. But they did not surrender. No, Your Majesty, they did not. We gave them every opportunity. We explained the benefits of submission, the consequences of resistance. They refused, not with anger or passion, but with a cold, quiet determination that I had never seen before. And so we went to war." Althros nodded. "We thought it would be quick, a matter of months at most. We had destroyed other species far more powerful than the humans. But they were different. Every battle we won, they learned from. Every weapon we used, they found a counter to. Every tactic we employed, they adapted to and turned against us. They were clever. More than clever, Your Majesty. They were relentless. We would destroy a fleet, and they would build 2 more. We would capture a world, and they would retake it or destroy it rather than let us hold it. We would kill their soldiers, and their civilians would pick up weapons and continue fighting." The Emperor frowned. "We won that war. We destroyed them completely. We won eventually, yes, but it took 50 years. 50 years against a species that had barely entered space travel. We lost more ships, more soldiers, more resources in that war than in any other conflict in our history. And yet we won." Althros looked at the Emperor with his ancient, tired eyes. "Did we? We destroyed their world. We killed their people. We burned their colonies. But if even one ship escaped, if even one group of humans survived, then we did not truly win. We only delayed the end. You think this ship proves that humans survived? I think this ship proves that we made a terrible mistake, Your Majesty. We tried to destroy a species that should never have been destroyed. Not because it was wrong morally, though it was, but because some species cannot be destroyed. They can only be delayed." The Emperor stood and walked to a window that looked out over the capital city. Billions of Valorians went about their daily lives below, unaware of the danger approaching. Ships rose and fell from the spaceport. Vehicles moved through the streets. Children played in parks. All of this, everything the Empire had built over 3,000 years, was now threatened by a single ship. "The fleet at KTH Nexus will stop them," the Emperor said, as much to himself as to Althros. 8,000 ships. Nothing can survive that. Behind him, Althros was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice soft and sad. "Your Majesty, I was there when we destroyed Earth. I saw the final battle. Their last ships, hopelessly outnumbered, fought to the end. Not to win. They knew they could not win. They fought to buy time for others to escape. As the Defiance fled into the void, its captain broadcast a final message. I remember it clearly, even after 2 centuries. He said, 'We will return. It may take a year, a decade, a century, or a millennium, but we will return, and when we do, we will remember everything.' I did not believe him at the time. I thought it was empty words, the defiance of a dying enemy. But now, 200 years later, a ship called the Revenant emerges from the void and destroys everything we send against it." The old advisor rose slowly to his feet. "You do not understand, Your Majesty. We did not exterminate the humans because they were weak. We exterminated them because they were too dangerous to allow to live. A species that fights like that adapts like that simply refuses to accept defeat. Such a species does not build a ship to die. They build a ship to win." The Emperor turned to face his advisor. "Then what do you suggest? That we surrender? That we beg for mercy?" "I suggest nothing, Your Majesty. I merely tell you what I know. The humans who fled were the survivors, the strongest, the smartest, the most determined of their kind. They have had 200 years to prepare. So 200 years of nothing but survival and planning and waiting. Your fleet at KTH Nexus may stop them, or it may not. But I tell you this, if they plan their return for 200 years, they have accounted for everything we might do. They know about KTH Nexus. They know about our fleet concentrations. They know our tactics and our weapons and our weaknesses. And they have prepared for all of it." The Emperor stared at his advisor in silence. The old Valorian's words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Outside, the sun was setting over the capital. The sky burned orange and red, colors of fire and blood. In 3 days, the largest fleet in Imperial history would gather at KTH Nexus to face a single human ship. The Emperor did not know what would happen then, for the first time in his long reign, and he was facing a future he could not predict and an enemy he did not understand. The humans had returned, and the Empire was afraid. The KTH Nexus was the most heavily defended position in the known galaxy. A narrow passage through a deadly nebula, it was the only route to the Valorian core worlds. For 3,000 years, this choke point had protected the heart of the Empire from invasion. Now, 8,000 warships filled that passage, arranged in a wall of steel and fire that stretched across space. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and carriers sat in precise formation, their weapons charged and ready. Every ship was crewed by veterans. Every captain had been briefed on the threat they faced. From the bridge of the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion, High Admiral Varath surveyed his fleet. It was the largest gathering of military power in the Empire's history. Nothing in the galaxy could challenge such force, and yet doubt gnawed at his mind. He had studied the reports from every engagement with the human vessel. He had watched recordings of entire fleets being torn apart in minutes. He had seen weapons that cut through shields like they were not there, a hull that absorbed and adapted to everything thrown at it, engines that move faster than physics should allow. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, "the enemy vessel has entered long-range sensor range. It is approaching on a direct course." Varath straightened in his command chair. "All ships, battle stations. Prepare to engage." Across the fleet, alarms sounded. Crews rushed to their positions, weapons powered up, shields activated. 8,000 ships, 250,000 Valorians, all focused on a single point in space where their enemy would appear. Minutes passed. The enemy vessel grew closer. On the sensor displays, it was just a small dot, seemingly insignificant against the vast array of Imperial might. It is not slowing down, the navigation officer observed. It is coming straight for us. Of course it is, Vorath muttered. It has not bothered to slow down for anything yet. The communications officer looked up. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the enemy vessel. Vorath blinked. The human ship had not responded to any communications during its entire advance through Imperial space. Put it through. The main view screen flickered. A human woman appeared, standing on what looked like a ship's bridge. She was tall for a human, with dark hair pulled back from a face that showed no fear at all. Her eyes were cold and focused. This is Captain Alara Chen of the TCS Revenant, she said. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. I am speaking to the commanding officer of the Valorian fleet. Vorath leaned forward. This is High Admiral Vorath of the Imperial Navy. You are in violation of Imperial space and responsible for the destruction of Imperial vessels. Surrender immediately and you may be shown mercy. The human woman smiled slightly. It was not a pleasant smile. Mercy, an interesting word from the people who burned Earth and hunted my species to near extinction. But I did not contact you to discuss surrender, yours or mine. I contacted you to give you a choice. A choice? Move your fleet aside. Let us pass. One, we have no interest in destroying more of your ships than necessary. Our business is with your emperor, not your common soldiers. Vorath laughed. He could not help it. The idea of one ship demanding that 8,000 move aside was absurd. You are outnumbered 8,000 to 1 human. Whatever technology you have, it cannot overcome such odds. Cannot it? The human smile faded. Let me tell you something, Admiral. For 200 years, my people have prepared for this moment. Every day, every hour, every second of those 2 centuries has been dedicated to one purpose, returning to face the empire that tried to destroy us. We have studied your fleets. We have analyzed your weapons. We have learned your tactics. We have spent 200 years doing nothing but preparing to fight you. And in all that time, one, you have done nothing but grow soft and complacent, assuming your power was unmatched. You have gathered 8,000 ships here. It is the largest fleet in your history, and it will not be enough. Vorath felt a chill run down his spine despite himself. The woman's confidence was unnerving. She was facing certain destruction, yet she spoke as if she were the one with the advantage. Your threats do not frighten us, he said, forcing his voice to remain steady. We will destroy you as we destroyed the rest of your kind. You will try, the human said. Remember, Admiral, I offered you a choice. The transmission ended. Vorath stared at the blank screen for a moment. Then he shook himself and turned to his officers. All ships fire at will. Destroy that vessel. 8,000 warships opened fire simultaneously. The space between the fleet and the Revenant became a solid wall of destruction. Energy beams, missiles, kinetic rounds, plasma bursts. Every weapon the Empire possessed streaked toward the single human ship. It was enough firepower to crack a planet in half. The Revenant did not slow down. It moved through the barrage like water flowing around stones. Its hull shifted and changed, absorbing some impacts, deflecting others, letting still others pass through spaces that seemed to open and close in the span of a heartbeat. The adaptive nanomaterials that made up its skin had already learned every weapon the Empire possessed. They knew exactly how to counter each one. No damage detected, the sensor officer reported, disbelief in his voice. The enemy vessel is continuing to advance. That is impossible, someone whispered. With the Revenant reached the edge of the Imperial formation, and then it began to kill. It did not attack like a ship. It attacked like a predator that had been starving for 200 years and had finally found prey. It moved through the fleet at speeds that should have been impossible, changing direction without slowing, appearing in one place and then another before sensors could track it. Where it passed, ships died. The Revenant's weapons were unlike anything the Valorians had encountered. Beams of brilliant white light that ignored shields entirely and cut through armor like paper. Missiles that seemed to home in on reactor cores with perfect accuracy. Some kind of field that simply made ships stop working, their systems going dead before they could even fire a shot. In the first minute, 50 ships were destroyed. In the second minute, 100 more followed them. By the 5th minute, the organized formation had become chaos. Ships tried to maneuver, to bring their weapons to bear, to concentrate fire on the human vessel. But the Revenant was never where they expected it to be. It flowed through the fleet like smoke through fingers. "Focus fire," Vorath screamed. "All ships, concentrate on that target." They tried. Thousands of weapons locked onto the Revenant and fired together. The space around the human ship became an inferno of energy and matter. The Revenant emerged from the firestorm untouched and destroyed another dozen ships with a casual sweep of its weapons. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, panic was beginning to spread. Officers who had never known fear were watching their fleet die. The veteran commanders were issuing contradictory orders. The carefully planned defensive strategy was collapsing into chaos. "Admiral," the sensor officer said, his voice shaking, "we have lost 600 ships. The enemy vessel shows no damage. 600 ships in less than 10 minutes. At this rate, the entire fleet would be destroyed in a matter of hours." Vorath stared at the tactical display. The small dot representing the Revenant moved through his fleet like death itself, leaving debris and silence in its wake. He had commanded ships for over a century. He had won battles that others said were impossible. He had never felt this helpless. "What do we do?" his first officer asked quietly. Vorath did not answer. He did not know. Aboard the Revenant, Captain Chen watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. Around her, her crew worked with calm efficiency, each person doing the job they had trained their entire lives to do. "Hull integrity at 100%, Chief Engineer Martinez reported. "Adaptive systems are operating perfectly. Their weapons are completely ineffective now." "Good. Navigation, continue current attack pattern. Weapons, prioritize the capital ships. Take out their command structure." "Aye, Captain." Commander Park appeared at her side. "Captain, we have destroyed over 700 enemy vessels. Estimated time to complete destruction of the fleet, approximately 8 hours. Chen shook her head. "We are not here to destroy the entire fleet, Commander. We are here to break them." "Captain, there is a difference between defeating an enemy and destroying them. We could kill every Valorian here, but that would make us no different from them. No, we want something else. We want them to know they cannot stop us. We want them to feel what our ancestors felt when the Valorian fleets came to Earth." She stood and walked to the main view screen, where the battle raged outside. Imperial ships were burning, drifting, exploding. The greatest military force in the galaxy was being systematically dismantled. "Open a channel to the enemy flagship," she ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Chen faced the screen. A moment later, High Admiral Vorath's face appeared. He looked older than he had just minutes ago. His eyes were haunted. "Admiral Vorath," Chen said, "your fleet is dying. In 8 hours, you will have no ships left. Your crews will all be dead, and my vessel will continue to the core worlds. Just as I said it would." "What do you want?" Vorath asked. His voice was hollow. "I want you to surrender." "Surrender? Our entire fleet?" "Yes. Order your ships to power down their weapons and withdraw from the Nexus. Allow us to pass. I give you my word that no more of your ships will be destroyed if you comply." Vorath stared at her. "You expect me to surrender 8,000 ships to one? I expect you to save what remains of your fleet, Admiral. You have already lost over 700 ships. How many more do you want to lose before you admit that this battle is already over? If we surrender, the path to the core worlds will be open. You could destroy everything. If I wanted to destroy everything, I would simply destroy your fleet and continue on my way. I am offering you a chance to save your remaining crews, Admiral. Water, take it." The communication cut off. Chen waited. Outside, the battle continued. More ships died. The Revenant moved through the fleet like a ghost, untouchable and unstoppable. The Imperial formation had completely collapsed now. Ships were retreating, trying to escape, abandoning their positions. 10 minutes passed. 20. 30. Then across the fleet, weapons began to power down. Ships that had been maneuvering for attack began to drift, their engines going idle. The firing stopped. "Captain," Lieutenant Kim reported, "we are receiving a general transmission from the enemy fleet. They are surrendering." Chen nodded slowly. "Acknowledge their surrender. Order them to clear the Nexus passage and hold position outside the nebula. Anyone who interferes with our passage will be destroyed." "Aye, Captain." The battle was over. When 8,000 ships had faced the Revenant, over 1,000 had been destroyed. The rest were now drifting in the void, their weapons silent, their crews waiting for judgment from a single human warship. Chen watched as the Valorian fleet began to withdraw, opening the passage to the core worlds. She felt no triumph. The lives lost today had been enemies. Yes, but they had also been people. Soldiers following orders, crews doing their jobs. They had not personally destroyed Earth or hunted human survivors. They had just been in the way. But she could not have reached the core worlds without going through them. And the Emperor, the one who had ordered the extermination of her species, was still waiting. Navigation, she said quietly. Set course for Valoria Prime. Best speed. Aye, Captain. Course laid in. The Revenant moved forward, and passing through the gap in the broken fleet, Valorian ships watched it go, their crews staring at the vessel that had defeated them so completely. Behind it, the KTH Nexus fell silent. The greatest fleet in the history of the Valorian Empire had been broken in less than 2 hours of actual combat. The invincible armada was invincible no longer, and throughout the galaxy, word began to spread. The human ship had won. The Valorians had surrendered. On 100 conquered worlds, slaves who had never known hope began to believe that change was possible. The Revenant continued toward the Imperial capital. The final reckoning was at hand. Valoria Prime was the jewel of the Empire, a world of gleaming cities and beautiful landscapes, home to billions of Valorians who had never known war or hardship. For 3,000 years, it had been the untouchable center of Imperial power. Now a human ship orbited above it. Emperor KTH IX stood at the window of his throne room, watching the distant glint of the Revenant as it circled his world. His guards had begged him to flee, to evacuate to a secure location, to hide. He had refused. He was the Emperor. He would not run from one ship. But he could not deny the fear that gripped his heart. The reports from KTH Nexus had arrived hours ago. His fleet, the greatest military force ever assembled, had surrendered to a single vessel. Over 1,000 ships destroyed in less than 2 hours. The rest defeated without a shot being fired at the end. Across the Empire, chaos was spreading. The subject species were rising up, encouraged by the news of the human victory. Colonial garrisons were overwhelmed. The supply lines were cut. Systems that had been firmly under Imperial control for centuries were suddenly in revolt. The Empire was crumbling, and above it all, the Revenant waited. Your Majesty, his aide approached hesitantly. We are receiving a transmission from the human ship. Their captain wishes to speak with you. KTH turned from the window. Put it through. The holographic display in the center of the throne room flickered to life. Captain Alara Chen appeared, standing on the bridge of her ship. She looked calm, almost peaceful. Behind her, her crew worked quietly at their stations. Emperor KTH, she said. Her voice was steady. I am Captain Chen of the Revenant. I believe it is time we spoke. What do you want, human? Have you come to gloat over your victory? To demand our surrender? To burn our world as we burned yours? Chen shook her head slowly. No, Your Majesty. I have not come to burn anything. Destruction is easy. It is what your empire has always done. Destroy what you cannot control. Erase what you cannot understand. We will not repeat your mistakes. Then why are you here? I am here to deliver a message and to give you a choice. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Speak. 203 years ago, your fleets came to Earth. They demanded our surrender. We refused. For 50 years, we fought you with everything we had. When it became clear we could not win, we fled. Your forces hunted us. They destroyed our colonies, our stations, our ships. They killed every human they could find. But they did not find all of us. One ship escaped into the void between galaxies. 847 people, carrying with them the last hope of our species. They spent the next 2 centuries preparing for this moment. Chen paused, her eyes never leaving the Emperor's face. I was born aboard the Revenant. I never saw Earth. I never knew the blue skies or the green forests or the oceans that my ancestors spoke of. All I have ever known is this ship and the stories of what was taken from us. For most of my life, I dreamed of revenge. I dreamed of coming here and burning Valoria Prime just as Earth was burned. I dreamed of making your people feel what mine felt when their world died. And now, the Emperor asked, now I am standing above your world with the power to destroy it, and I find that I do not want to. Caliph blinked. You do not want revenge? Oh, I want it. Part of me wants it very badly, but that is not why we came back. Revenge would make us no different from you. We would become what we hate, another empire built on destruction and death. Then what do you want? Justice. Not revenge, but justice. There is a difference. Chen stepped closer to the camera, her face filling the display. Your empire is over, Your Majesty. Not because we will destroy it, but because it is already destroying itself. Your subject species are rising. Your fleets are defeated. Your reputation for invincibility is gone. Within a year, perhaps two, the Valorian Empire will exist only in history books. We are not here to speed that process along. We are here to ensure that what replaces your empire is better than what came before. The Emperor sat heavily on his throne. He suddenly looked very old. You speak of justice. What does that mean? It means that every species you enslaved will be freed. Every world you conquered will have the choice of independence. Every atrocity your empire committed will be recorded, documented, and remembered, not to punish, but to ensure it never happens again. And my people, what happens to the Valorians? Nothing. Your people will not be harmed. Your worlds will not be burned. Your children will not be hunted. We are not you. We do not exterminate species that threaten us. Chen's voice hardened slightly. But your people will face something that may be harder to bear than destruction. They will face the truth. Every conquered species will tell their stories. Every massacre will be documented. Every act of cruelty will be recorded. Watch your children and your children's children will grow up knowing exactly what the Empire was, what it did, what it cost. The galaxy will look upon the Valorian people and see not conquerors, but cautionary tales. That is your justice, Your Majesty. Not death, but memory. Not destruction, but shame. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Outside the window, the Revenant continued its silent orbit. You could destroy us, he said finally. You have the power. Why show mercy? Because mercy is what separates us from you. Because my grandfather told me, before he died, that the measure of a people is not what they do when they are weak, but what they do when they are strong. We are strong now, stronger than you ever were, and we choose to be better. Chen straightened. I am coming down to your planet, Your Majesty. I will come alone and unarmed. I will walk into your palace, and I will deliver the terms of your empire's dissolution in person. If you accept them, the transition will be peaceful. If you refuse, if I refuse, then I will return to my ship and leave. We will not destroy you, but we will not save you either. Your empire is falling. Without our help, the transition will be violent, chaotic, and bloody. Your people will suffer alongside those they conquered. Is that what you want? The Emperor closed his eyes. He thought of his ancestors who had built this empire through war and conquest. He thought of the billions of Valorians who depended on him. He thought of the future, stretching out before him in uncertain darkness. When he opened his eyes, he looked tired but resolved. Come, he said. I will hear your terms. 2 hours later, a small shuttle descended from the Revenant and landed in the courtyard of the Imperial Palace. Captain Alara Chen walked alone down the ramp, wearing a simple uniform with no visible weapons. Guards surrounded her, weapons raised, but she paid them no attention. She walked through the palace, past halls decorated with murals celebrating 3,000 years of conquest, past statues of emperors who had ground entire species under their heels, past treasures looted from 100 worlds. She saw all of it. She remembered all of it, but she did not stop. The doors of the throne room opened before her. Emperor Caliph IX sat on his throne, surrounded by his guards and advisors. They watched her approach with a mixture of fear and hatred. Chen walked to the center of the room and stopped. She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small container. Slowly, deliberately, she knelt and opened it, pouring its contents onto the floor. It was soil, dark, rich earth that had traveled across 200 years and 1,000,000 light years to reach this place. This is all that remains of Earth, she said quietly. A handful of soil, carried by my ancestors when they fled. It has been passed down through 8 generations, waiting for this moment. She stood and faced the Emperor. Your empire is over, she said. Not because we destroyed it, but because we will do something far worse. We will remember. Every species you enslaved will be freed. Every atrocity will be recorded. Every world you burned will be named. Your children and your children's children will grow up knowing exactly what you were. In the galaxy will look upon the Valorian people and see not conquerors, but cautionary tales. The Emperor stared at her. And if we accept your terms, what then? Then the transition will be peaceful. Your people will be allowed to govern themselves. Your worlds will not be occupied. Your citizens will not be harmed. You will have the chance to rebuild, to become something better than what you were. And the humans? What will you do? Chen looked at the handful of soil on the floor. Earth, the world she had never seen but had loved all her life. We will rebuild, she said. Somewhere out there is a world waiting for us. We will find it. We will make it our home. And we will remember where we came from and what was done to us. But we will not let that memory consume us. We will not become what we hate. She turned to leave, and then paused and looked back at the Emperor. Humanity does not seek extinction. We are better than that. But know this, if you ever rise again, if you ever reach for empire, we will be watching. And next time, we will not stop at your fleets. She walked out of the throne room, leaving the Emperor and his court in silence. In the weeks and months that followed, the Valorian Empire dissolved, not with fire and blood, but with quiet inevitability. Species that had been enslaved for centuries declared their independence. Worlds broke away from Imperial control. The massive military machine that had enforced Valorian rule collapsed without purpose. And through it all, the Revenant watched. It did not intervene. It did not conquer. It simply waited, a silent guardian ensuring that the transition happened peacefully. Captain Chen kept her word. No Valorian world was attacked. No Valorian citizen was harmed. The Empire ended not with a bang, but with a quiet surrender to the inevitable. On 100 worlds, former slaves told their stories. The records of Imperial atrocities grew into vast archives, documenting 3,000 years of conquest and cruelty. Valorian children grew up learning the truth about their ancestors, carrying a burden of shame that would last for generations. And across the galaxy, a new word spread. Not a word of human vengeance or human cruelty, a word of human patience. The species that waited, the species that remembered, the species that, even after near extinction, found a way back. The Valorians learned too late the oldest human truth. You can burn their worlds. You can scatter their people. You can erase their names from history. But you cannot kill their hope. You cannot destroy their determination. And you cannot, no matter how hard you try, make them forget. A year after the dissolution of the Empire, the Revenant finally left Valorian space. Its mission was complete. The debt had been paid, not in blood, but in justice. Captain Chen stood on the bridge, watching the stars stream past as the ship accelerated away from the territories it had spent 2 centuries preparing to confront. Navigation, she said. Set course for the outer rim. The scouts reported a habitable system there. Good atmosphere, clean water, stable climate. Aye, Captain. Course laid in. Commander Park appeared at her side. A new home? Chen nodded slowly. A new home, a new beginning. The first chapter of a new human history. And what about the old history? All the preparation, all the training, all the planning for war? Chen thought for a moment. Then she smiled, the first genuine smile in a very long time. We pass it on, she said. We teach our children what was done to us and what we did in response. We make sure they understand why we made the choices we made. And we hope that they never have to make those choices again. She looked out at the stars, vast and infinite and full of possibility. But if they do, she added quietly, they will be ready. The Revenant sailed on into the darkness, carrying with it the last survivors of a species that had refused to die. Behind it, a fallen empire contemplated its sins. Ahead of it, a new world waited. Humanity had survived. And somewhere across the void of space and time, the souls of Earth smiled.